I love that you focus on self-worth. Because
Thank you.
that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I was reading your story about how you were doing all of these high level, really cool things, like working with Disney and Kia and the Citibanks, and then you flipped and weren't able to do any of that. And we really get tied up in our identity being one thing, and then do you have children? I know you
Yes,
focus on a
yes,
lot of children's books.
yes. I have right now they're grown, and so now I'm a grandma too. But yes,
Cool. How many do you have?
two boys.
Two boys. All
Yeah.
right, cool. Yeah, I know mothers in particular tend to lose their identity in being a mother, and which is problematic in a whole lot of ways. And I always refused, and I just could not allow myself to fall into and be all consumed in motherhood. And I think that was really hard for me in a lot of different ways because in in a certain way, it's a lot easier just to allow yourself to be consumed by it while it's happening. But that brings us problems in the future when, they don't need you as much and you need to release them into the world and let them be their own person. And then if you're not actively spending all of your time being a mother, because it is all consuming, then who are you? What's left? But uh on a much, much smaller scale, I related to your story because when I was always super independent, kind of grew up having to take care of myself more or less. And so when me and my husband got together and were dating, all through us dating, and then when we got married, for years I was the breadwinner and I was the one that paid most of the bills. And then when we decided to have children, I was able to quit working and stay at home with them. But then it was really hard for me to flip from being the provider to allowing him to provide for us. And it took me years to get over that.
Yeah, it does. And you know what? I had a sage dad, and my dad was kind of a genius in every way. But this is a story that I haven't shared too much that I think would kind of be cool to share right now. My dad always said, outsmart your kids. Outsmart them. So this is like he would say, okay, so if Drew, one of my boys, if he wants to have an earring, then I would probably come in like a pirate with earrings all over me and just like come to him with an event. So he's like, oh, rolling his eyes. And he was giving me all these ideas, but my last name is Weed. And there was one time when my son came and he found a Tweety bird and he was smoking a joint and he was a teenager, he's like 12 and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to outsmart him on this one? Because our last name is Weed. And so I was like, okay, okay, okay. And then I had it. I was like, great idea, Drew. Get that t-shirt and then get one for me and your dad and Matthew, and we'll all go to the mall wearing that t-shirt. And he looked at me and he was like, he rolled his eyes, and sure enough, he said, oh, Mom, never mind. And he ended up not buying the shirt. And I thought that was kind of brilliant to have a dad saying, when you have these kids, especially when it's so hard, like you said, being a mom, you're concentrating on your career, and how are you going to raise these kids and keep your sanity? I
Yeah,
think one way is to literally outsmart them.
that's a method for sure. I'm
That's
glad it worked for you.
it did. It did. At least he didn't end up buying that t-shirt and, going to school wearing it. So at least it worked for me.
Yeah. Uh, we went to the beach recently. We just got back this past week. And the whole time we were there, my son was trying to convince us to get a drink of our beers. He's 10.
Oh, DC. No. Right.
And of course, his dad just automatically pushes back. He's like, "No, go on. No, go on." Or "Boy, you don't even know what you're talking about. Go on." And
Right, right.
me and my friend were talking about how you really have to approach that with finesse. You have
Yeah,
to, because if
yeah.
you make it more taboo, I heard recently that I heard a thing. It was talking about how in Europe they don't have near the alcoholism in teenagers that we do in the States.
Really?
Because in the States it's set up as taboo. It's a naughty thing to do. So teenagers, of course, they making it taboo,
Right.
making it naughty makes it more appealing to them. And in Europe, it's just normal. They have a younger drinking age starting out with, and most everybody has a glass of wine with dinner or a beer with dinner or, whatever. It's all very moderate because it's not, it's incorporated into the culture as normalized. So it's less appealing to the children to, be bad and do these bad things and because it kind of, I think most parents, mine for sure, I remember being a teenager and my mom, she made this dinner. It was a beer butt chicken. You ever heard that?
Okay. Never heard of that.
It may be a
Sounds
Southern
good.
thing. It may for sure be a Southern thing. But essentially, you take a whole chicken and you stick it on a beer. Like you stick
Okay.
the whole thing
Okay.
on a beer
Okay.
bottle or a can of beer.
Okay.
And then you put it in the grill and smoke it for however long. It's been years since I've thought about this, since I've had it, but it was pretty good. But you have to, it has to be like half a beer. So you have to like and my parents didn't drink and, or my mom didn't for sure. And, so she was fixing to pour out half this beer so that she could cook with the other half. And I was like, oh, I was bugging her. I was like, let me try some. She thought she was going to get over on me. She was like,
Right.
"Oh, you think you're going to like this? I'll show you. You'll spit it right out. It's so gross." And she handed it to me. She was like, "Go ahead if you think you're bad." I swear it would not have mattered if it was the most disgusting thing I had ever tasted in my life. The fact that she presented it like that, you know, triggered my ego. So I was going to act like it was delicious no matter what. And so yeah, we're just talking about that and how you kind of have to approach it in a way of nonchalantness. You have to be like, "Oh, it's not a big deal." And but anyway, we're getting off on tangents of parenting. How did you instill self-worth in your children? They do pretty good with that?
Yes, I did. I actually did better than with myself.
Don't we
And the
all?
reason why, as far as my self-worth, let me start there and then I'll swing back to the kids. I
Sure.
was really sensitive and an empath when I was a kid. And so I learned the hard way through my life that there's a difference between self-esteem and self-worth.
Mm,
Self-esteem is like, I did a great job. I accomplished something. I got that A or whatever it might be. But self-worth isn't predicated on anything that you do on the outside. It's what you claim that you're worth.
mhm,
So you could have the best self-esteem, like, hey, I did this, I did that, I did. But if you're not doing something,
mhm,
your worth could be terrible. Your
mhm,
self-worth could be terrible. But with kids, I had heard something that I used with my son that was brilliant. And it worked. And what it was I heard somebody say, like, if you have red lemonade, Kool-Aid on your table and you have this white carpet and your kid is coming up and it's like, you see, oh my gosh, they're going to take that Kool-Aid and it's going to be everywhere. Um, Usually mom's like, no, don't touch that. Oh, you might spill it. You might spill it and keep on saying that kind of thing.
mhm,
And this person had said, no, what you want to do is you want to get them to start programming other ideas, a better idea. So you actually go through this whole thing where you're like, So there's red Kool-Aid there. When you touch it, it might fall on the carpet, and then I'd feel really bad
Mhm.
about that. So what's a better idea? And honest to goodness, that worked like a charm where I would see Drew, literally take, if it was the Kool-Aid, it wasn't always that, obviously, but
Mhm.
take the Kool-Aid, take it off where it would spill. And he really got into his head that whole better idea dynamic. I wish I had had somebody do that for me because if I had been trained to think, oh, a better idea, rather than shame, embarrassment, trying to overcompensate. I mean, like I went to school literally for art, got a D, even though I became an award-winning artist at one point of my life, and went into business and excelled to prove that I wasn't a too sensitive.
Mm. Mhm. I love all of that. That getting the kids to think it's their idea. I do the same thing. Also, it might spill, it might spill, often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So,
Exactly.
I play a lot of pickleball, and I'm telling people constantly about how like you can watch, and if you hit it out of bounds, if you hit the ball out of bounds, so often you have to let it go and move on really quickly. Like you just kind of got to forget it and let it be. Instead though, a lot of people beat themselves up about it and they're like, "Oh, I could have done better. Why did I do that? Why did I hit it like that?" And then what ends up happening is they hit it out again of bounds, oftentimes in the exact same spot that they hit it out of bounds the first time. So, that just shows you the self-fulfilling prophecy of our heads, our minds. The mind doesn't work in should nots, could nots. It just,
Exactly.
it's just kind of plain. It is what it's very, what's the word? Literal. It doesn't hear, don't hit it out of bounds again. It just hears out of bounds again. And that's exactly what you end up doing. And so yeah, with children, it's the same thing. And with everything, it's the same thing.
Everything, everything. And it's like one of the biggest revelations that I've had lately is that problem solving, follow this, problem solving is kind of the biggest addiction of mankind. That's all we're trying to do, solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
When I get over my anxiety, then this is what my life will look like. When I get after my health challenge, this is what my life will look like. It's solve the problem, solve the problem, solve the problem. But in doing that, guess what you're doing? You're
Focus on the
focusing
problem.
on the problem. And unless you can really go in, this is another thing that's been big for me. Feel the feelings fully because that's another thing that I think that we do by accident. We want to come up with the solution, the answer, and so we try to push things down, push them away, do whatever we can to distract ourselves, and yet the biggest answer of all is just like feeling the feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, I have a friend who's a sober living coach. So he
What is
teaches
that?
teaches
That's
people how to live
cool.
soberly, like
Okay,
people who
gotcha.
have had problems with alcohol is usually what he mainly focuses on. I don't know if he really does other types of addictions and whatnot, but I love his approach because his approach to all of that is similar in my approach to the things that I do. Whereas a lot of people say you're trying to get sober, they focus on, again, the problem, which is alcohol or what have you. And so they're rearranging their entire life by the focus of the issue. So they won't go hang out with these friends because those friends drink. They won't go out with those friends to that bar they always go to because that's where alcohol is. They won't, XYZ, whatever, whatever. And he helps you instead focus on like crowding out the problem with all the good things that you can add in instead. So instead of being like, I can't go hang out at that bar with those friends because there's alcohol present, you instead you're like, it's not an issue because you don't want it to become an issue that, it may already be an issue if it's, but you want to learn how to live in spite of it, beside it, or else you always have it looming over you. It's always a thing, it's always a part of your existence. It's like, oh, I can't be around that because I can't handle it. Well, instead, we're trying to learn how to live life. And he said, uh, his goal is to get you to forget that it's even an issue.
Wow. And it sounds like he helps to integrate everything.
Yes. Yes. And that's something that I've always done too. Like, I don't believe in waiting until Monday or waiting until the first of the month or whatever, whatever, because that puts too much power on the problem. And then like smokers, for example, if they quit, they'll be like, it's been 2 days since I've had a cigarette. It's been 3 weeks since I've had a cigarette. It's been 468 days since I've had, and I'm like, wow, the power you are giving that, the energy that you're giving that, keeping up with that, where you could be refocusing, retraining your mind to retraining yourself, your habits, your lifestyle to forget that it was ever even an issue to begin with and putting that energy that you're using in, man, because what they're doing in counting is, man, I really wish that things weren't the way they are, but they are. And you could just as well use that energy to redirect yourself to focus your mind and life and habits on building something positive instead of just focusing on what you can't have or what you don't want in your life anymore.
That's so powerful. That is so powerful. I recently looked up the word healing, like
Okay.
heal. And one of the main definitions, I didn't know this. It means whole.
Mm,
Healing means whole.
mm,
If that's the case, then true healing means that you accept every part of you. And by putting a date, like, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, it's almost like I'm ashamed of that part of me. But look at me now. But that's not true. It's like if you can accept all those parts and then move towards something that you love,
hmm
from what I'm hearing you say, that's so much more powerful.
Oh, yeah. And I like what you said earlier about how we can tie our worth into the doing of things.
Yeah.
And that's part of our culture and society for sure. Is our, you know, we're we're raised to believe that you're only as good as the grades you get, or the degree you get, or the job you get, the amount of money you bring in. When I don't know, as cliche as it sounds, if we could learn to flip that around and focus on what's actually important in life, we'd all be a lot happier. Because oftentimes in chasing the achievements, we don't have time to sit and, smell the roses or have a conversation with your child or listen to Aunt Margaret who's having a hard day. And, the building the relationships in our lives are what really brings us that fulfillment and purpose and love and connection that we all are really striving for.
Yeah, it's almost like if we imagine that we're going to an event or a party, and you walk in the room and there's somebody that's like, "Yeah, I'm the CEO of this company, and look what I did, and look at my bank account, and all this other stuff." Or have you ever gone into that same room and just somebody so quiet, maybe not even saying a thing, but you feel the magnitude of their love. I mean, it's just like written all over them. Which person are you going to go towards?
Hmm
And which person is going to be the magnet and which person is going to repel you? I mean, not I,
hmm
I too am like, hey, I'm doing this or hey, I'm doing that. But in reality, man, when we have that inside radiance, that's the best calling card. That's the business card I'd like to have.
Yeah, when we die, people don't remember our achievements. They remember how we made them feel.
Yeah, that's all that matters. That's all that matters at the end of the day.
Hmm So, do you ever still struggle with self-worth?
Oh my gosh. They always say that you teach what you need to learn. And I'm a grandma now, and it took that long to really, even when I started out as the founder of the Self-Worth, it was after some health challenges that brought me from corporate, top of the heap, to being bedridden for 3 years with a mystery illness. And my self-worth totally went out the door. I mean, like gone, because I had predicated everything of who I was with being the director of development at Citibank and working with Disney and Universal consultants. And now I can do nothing.
Hmm.
But it was actually a 1943 pure copper penny that turned me around because I learned that a penny could be worth $1 million.
Hmm.
And if a penny could be worth $1 million, something that hardly anybody would go over and pick up, then what am I worth? Then what am I? Who am I? And that penny was made by mistake. And that's when I flipped my life and I decided to become the founder of the Self-Worth Initiative and do musicals and books and everything that I could for kids and their families so that they would understand their worth and determine it for themselves. But this is a lifetime. I think even if you know exactly what self-worth is, to embody it, to
Hmm.
be it when nobody else is around, when you've been abandoned, when you lose your health, when you lose your money, when you lose everything, but still, we see sometimes on the news those people who have lost a home and they're like, but I'm still here.
Hmm.
I'm still here and I've got my loved ones. And we can feel that. That's like self-worth. They're not, it's like interesting to actually witness it in the world and try it on for ourselves.
Yeah, it is a ever evolving thing because you can think that you fix all of your self-worth issues and then you'll be fine and dandy and living your best life for maybe even a couple of months, few months, and then something will happen. Things will change. Life will evolve as it always inevitably does. And then all of these old wounds come back up and you're like, oh man, I thought I was over this. I guess I'm not. And I think most everybody really struggles with that. Um, I think even people who think they don't do. They just don't
Oh,
realize
yes.
they do.
Oh,
I
yes.
think it's
They're
just a
some of the
regular
worst.
human thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that, and also with spirituality, right?
Mhm.
It's like we want to get the A in spirituality. It's sort of like, okay, look, I'm radiating, I'm shining, and then inside, oh my gosh, you look at influencers, you look at these people who have millions and millions of followers committing suicide. Why?
Oh, yeah.
It's because sometimes the more that you project the spiritual perfection,
Mm-hmm.
the more you have to hide that stuff, and then when it really hits, you've got nowhere to go and nowhere to go, no one to talk to because you don't want to fall off of that ledge. But the reality is, that's why I love discovering that healing is being, or is being whole, and that if we can accept those parts that we're ashamed of, and we could say, okay, it's okay. I still own that part, and I can share it with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That is freedom. That is being human.
Yes, I agree completely. That's the concept of shadow work.
Yeah.
Is taking all of the part because all of us have the good and the bad within us. None of us are perfect. It's always a balancing act, hoping the putting forth the effort and energy to allow the light to take over and the darkness not to. But sometimes that's really difficult, and sometimes we beat ourselves up for that human aspect of us, of both.
Yeah, if we knew I mean, like when you watch a movie, it's like the reason we watch the movie is because we're watching a human journey. I mean, how boring would it be if you're sitting there watching something and it's like, oh, I'm happy today. Okay. I'm happy today. Again, I'm happy. I mean, that's great. That's wonderful. And sometimes we reach that, but where's the growth? Every time anything that has happened to me that's like brought me down to my knees, it's like somebody told me, I think this is a really good saying. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but the farther back that you can pull a slingshot,
Mm-hmm.
the farther that that can go.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the truth. I
Yeah.
think that's the truth of the matter. Sometimes when we're in that time where it just feels like it's a deep hole and we're never going to ever get through,
Mm-hmm.
we get astounded because we leave behind everything that no longer worked. We're later from that, and we become more magnificent and shine even brighter. At least that's what I found in my own life.
Well, it's a whole thing that they say I say they loosely. I don't know. I can't really like cite specific resources, but it is a whole thing that people are, it's believed that we have so much mental health problems and anxiety and depression and poor self-worth and lack of confidence. You know, all of these things that we're all struggling with are so profound right now because, for the most part, our lives are easier than they've ever been. And like, yes, life is hard. Life has always been hard. It's always going to be hard. It's just, you're trading out different types of hard, but there's always the good and the bad,
Yeah,
always. And
yeah,
historically speaking, for thousands of years, we didn't really have time to really be anxious or depressed or really anything because, where's our next meal coming from? We have to, it was a struggle to, and of course, there's still many, many people across the world who struggle with this. I'm just talking mainly like US, Europe, probably developed. Um, World and whatnot. But and even that's loosely. Anyway, we could go on tangents forever trying to clarify. But we don't really have to, most of us struggle to put food on the table every single day. We don't have to risk, we don't have to watch our children starving and us unable to provide. We don't have to, the Great Depression was more or less about the last time we collectively had to deal a whole lot with that. After that, we had the big economic boom and the baby boom, and everything started looking up pretty well for us, statistically speaking, for what, 75, 100 years?
yeah,
We're
yeah.
coming up on 100, not quite there yet. My grandfather was born in 42 and he would be about 91-ish. My math is terrible. I can't math, but something like that, right? So when you think about that, we've had a lot of a time to adjust. They say, uh, good times make weak men and troubling times make strong men, something like that. And it's like this whole cycle in the history and societal studies, economics, I don't know, words.
Yeah, right now we also have so many choices when you think about it.
Mm.
And all of the, the phone stuff that the viral everything that's going on.
Mhm.
It's like, can you imagine being back in the day where I come over for a cup of coffee and we're just checking it out and you're telling me about your day and we have a true connection. But
Mm-hmm.
today it's like, where's the truth in everything?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes hard to find your way when everybody's going a certain direction, and belonging is
Yeah.
so powerful, especially for women. More for women. That sense of belonging is everything. Where do we get that? Where do we truly get that?
And from my experience, most people are terrified of it. So we start to connect and build that bond. And then we hit a point where it's like, oh no, okay, hold on, walls, throw the walls back up. This isn't safe.
Yes, exactly. There are so many walls. I don't even know, like, when you look at those kids that are coming up from COVID, that weren't even able to go to school. And it's sort of like one of my mentors said to me that she went to a board meeting. And back in the day, everybody would be like really paying attention. She walks in, and nowadays everybody's like on their phone right when she walks in. And it's like, wow, it's like that. I mean, yeah, it's a whole different world. And we really do have to understand how to get that self-worth back. And I think that one of the ways to get the self-worth back is to go back to what you did as a child
Yes.
naturally, and whatever that was, be that.
Hmm.
Be that. I truly, truly believe everything that I'm doing right now is that we don't get stuck because of fear. We get stuck because we give away our quills or power, one by one by one.
Hmm.
And even more importantly, nobody can take our power away. We are the only ones that can say, here, will you let me now? Here, will I get that job? Here. And it's sort of like a lot of times we're giving ourselves away to something we don't even believe in.
Hmm.
What's that about?
Yeah, always searching for the love and the connection, the place and the
Yeah.
purpose.
Yep, 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 yep. And I feel blessed that at least with my journey where I've been able to reinvent myself so many times, uh, I just want to make a difference. Right now, I'm in that place. I will talk to anybody who's going through anything just to say I care. Because sometimes that's the only thing people can hear.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Coming back to we all feel like that at least some point in our life, mostly always. Um, what really helped me was to realize that everybody was worried about pretty much the same things. And
Yeah.
like, here's an example. I used to, as a teenager, of course, I wouldn't be caught dead walking out of the house without shaving my legs, right? That I think that's a pretty common thing that
Yeah,
most.
that's a common thing. I remember those days. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then one day I realized that not once had I ever noticed if someone else had perfectly shaven legs or not.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing across the board. Like I used to be really concerned about my belly and sit up straight and suck it in and keep everything tight and then I started realizing that I not once have I ever noticed if somebody else was loose and just had a couple of rolls and it was like whatever and in my that was like a switch flipped in my head and I was like, well, if I feel like they're good enough just the way they are, then why can't I be good enough just the way I am also? And of course, like I say, a switch flipped. It wasn't something that just overnight I was okay with, but it started like flickering. The light started to come on, and I was just like, well, maybe I can hold on to this. Maybe I can agree that that's my reality. Maybe it's okay that I'm not perfect and that, this is my body and this is how I look. And the more you lean into that, because again, the physical appearance is something that a lot of people get stuck on. We get stuck on not liking who we see when we look in the mirror and comparing ourselves to the influencers nowadays. Used to, it was just magazines and TV shows, but now it's and the people around you, but now it's so many more things to compare yourself to. And what really matters is people are going to notice how you make them feel when they're around you. So if you're focused on that, then you're distracted, because we can't actually multitask. That's a myth. What we're actually doing is switching back our attention back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so if you're focused on, sit ups, posture's good. Always posture's good. But if you're consumed mentally with how you're presenting yourself and how you're looking and oh, make sure you move the right way and say the right things and you lose paying attention to what the person in front of you is actually saying and understanding their world and the connection that you could build with those people. And the more I started doing that, the more I started paying attention to the people around me and how they felt and what they thought about and what their decision process was and what lights them up. And I found that it's much more fulfilling to make other people feel good and make other people smile, learn how to compliment people. I try to find something that I like about them and let them know. And because we all, if we get a compliment, especially a random one from a stranger, we always walk away feeling wonderful.
Yeah.
So why can't we try a little bit more to spread that? And then the more you focus on uh, outwardly projecting that love and that understanding and that acceptance and the compassion to the people around you, especially the ones that are harder to do that with, because those are the ones that need it most. The more, in a way, it's selfish because the more you do that, the more you lose the attention attached to your own flaws. So you stop paying attention to what's quote unquote wrong with you, and you start to realize, like, oh, well, if it's okay for them, then it's okay for me.
That is totally profound. And when you were talking, I was wondering, yeah, I was thinking to myself, gosh, it's so interesting that our eyes go outward. Everything we see is out there. You know,
Hmm.
what a different world if our eyes were going inward, but that's where our heart is. So I
Hmm.
guess what I'm hearing you say is see with your heart.
True.
See with your heart, because if you can see with your heart, then everything opens up to possibilities. If you see with your eyes, it's almost like then you are, in a way, comparing to a certain extent.
Hmm.
I love what you were saying. Beautiful.
Yeah. It's a lot of things for sure. There's a lot of different directions that you can go with trying to heal your own self-worth and whatnot. But I found radical acceptance of what is. I I teach yoga and meditation, so I prioritize stress relief. I do restorative yoga specifically, so you're probably not going to lose weight coming to my classes. We don't do hot yoga or vinyasa or anything like that. We do most everything is sitting or lying down and meditative. We focus on stress relief because stress is one of the biggest contributors to health problems
Yeah.
because your body only has your nervous system. We all hear about the fight, flight, freeze response. Well, its counterpart is rest, digest, and heal. And it's like a light switch. Either one's on or the other's on. And if your stress response is activated, then it puts all of the other mechanisms on hold. Because if you're running from a tiger, it doesn't matter if you digest your food properly.
Right,
It
right,
doesn't
right.
matter if the scratch on your leg gets healed. Like right now, we have bigger issues to worry about. But in our society and culture, everything's so like bombarding all of the time that, our nervous system can't tell the difference between a tiger chasing us and a upcoming deadline. It's all the same. Or traffic. We're just stuck in traffic and we're going to be 5 minutes late. So it's just all stress. So focusing on stress and relaxation is my primary goal in most of everything I do. So I teach my students, we want to always do our best, but we want to be mindful and of our body, of our mind, of our emotional state. That's what yoga helps with is learning how to listen to your body and everything that it's saying because it's always talking to us. It's just it doesn't use words, so we think it's not talking to us. We think that our mind, would tell us if we needed to drink more water. But, it's our body that's throwing out all these signals. But if we don't have the space to listen to it, then we're missing the signals until it becomes screaming. And then by the end, so we don't often listen when it's just a whisper. We wait until it's, bedridden for 3 years. What
Yeah.
happened with that? Did you ever figure out?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I went from doctor to doctor, and I think this happens maybe to a lot of women, especially after COVID. But during this time, which was a while ago, I went to doctor, and the first doctor told me it's MS. And then the second doctor told me it's Lou Gehrig's. And then the third doctor told me that it was all in my head. And when you have doctor after doctor telling you different things, you
Hmm.
start to really wonder. And like my big thing was honesty, like, coming straight. And it's like all the people around me after a while, in the beginning, they're all for me, with me. But then if no two doctors are saying the same thing, then
What do you
what's
do?
on? And I knew I was dying. I knew I was dying so much so that I'd have my husband take me to a hospital and sit in the hospital parking lot just in case I passed away. I mean, that's how desperate, and the pain. Oh my gosh, the pain was like giving childbirth every single day. Now, I had a heavy flow, which they had told me was probably perimenopause and maybe to be expected. But what it turned out to be is it turned out to be a fibroid tumor the size of a grapefruit that was behind my uterus. They didn't catch it because during that time period, you usually check on your stomach, like on the outside, not inside. They didn't have that kind of technology back then. And so they missed it. And my iron was between a 3 and a 6, depending on when they checked. When my doctor found out that my iron had been that low, he said, "You should have been dead a long time ago." And I had been hemorrhaging. I knew that, but no doctor went there. And I think, when I look back, I've had a couple of health challenges that are all in the mystery arena. And I think that that was because now everything that I do is to make a difference, to tell people, hang on, be able to share the story, be able to understand somebody else profoundly. Because, like, right now, there's so many people with COVID, long COVID. They can't get answers. What do they do? I've been there. I know how it feels. And I know some ideas to help them get out of that just from my story.
Yeah, I agree that our medical system is problematic in a lot of different ways. But especially as a woman, are so many things go getting dismissed and misdiagnosed. Heaven forbid you ever get anxiety put on your medical chart because nobody will ever take you seriously ever again.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were finally able to figure all of that out and get answers and get help.
It took 3 years, and it took being better, and it took actually creativity was my saving grace. My saving grace was that I was naturally creative and naturally like a little social worker when I was a kid. And I got back to that. That seemed to like writing the books, coming up with ideas. That was the thing that was a magnet towards life. But during that time period, I have to say there were many times I wanted to check out because, when your credibility, well, I think one of the biggest things that I want to change in this world, if I could snap my fingers, for me, my biggest thing would be to give a voice to the voiceless. For people a lot of people who go through medical challenges, they can't get a doctor. You're looking to somebody else to save your life or to help you, and
Hmm.
they're looking at you with blank eyes. What do you do?
Hmm.
Where do you go? I mean, thank goodness that you're doing the meditation and you're teaching the de-stressing and everything else, because under those circumstances, you're on high alert all the time,
Hmm.
trying to solve the problem.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that's not how life works. I found, once again, just for me, it's almost the opposite. The more that I pay attention to trying to solve the problem, the deeper I go. The more that I figure out what lightens me up, gets me excited, and I move towards that. It's almost like I'm telling myself there's something worth living for, and I'm leaning into that. And that's where I have found miracles happen.
Yeah. So many people. it takes a lot of courage to for a lot of people to go, make that first appointment in and of itself. Especially women tend to have that caregiver problem
Yeah.
where everybody else's problems need to be situated before ours, and we'll get to our problems when there's extra time and energy, but there's never extra time or energy. So, if you make that first appointment and it doesn't go well, a lot of people just shut down and they're like, well, I guess I'm fine. They said I'm fine. I
And
guess I
then those
go.
a lot of times, yeah. And then a lot of times those are the people that drown, because there really is something underlying. They know it. They know it. But where do you go when you're going to somebody who's supposedly an expert and they're looking at you like, hey, or, maybe it's anxiety. And
Hmm.
it isn't. There's really something. You're anxious because there's something going wrong. I mean, which comes first? Is it the anxiety that causes the problem? Well, both. I know. But, it becomes such a hard thing to do. And when you can do yoga like you're saying and you share with all of your peeps that maybe if they can like calm down a little bit, they can find their center. If they can find their center, they can speak with power and say, I understand, doctor, that you're saying that you're not seeing something, but I know my body, something is wrong, and let's figure it out. And
Hmm.
don't get off of it. Don't let it just be something underneath the rug.
Yeah. Again, it's a society and culture thing. We're not only taught not to listen. Well, okay, so we're not taught to listen to our body or how to listen to our body, but we're inadvertently actively taught to not trust our own intuition and how we feel. The doctors know best. The
Where did we
experts know
get
best.
that? Where
Where
did we
did
get
we get
that?
that?
That's a that's something to really ponder. Where did we learn that? Where did we learn that? I guess as kids, you
Yeah.
go to the doctor, you go to the doctor for the answers. But boy, could we flip that? What would it look like if we flipped that? But then again, look at all those people who have long COVID. What are they, so there a lot of times there aren't answers and you
Hmm.
have to reinvent yourself in the midst of turmoil.
Yeah. Yeah. My philosophy is less is more. So while, again, focusing on stress levels, uh, creates space to where you can listen and do and adjust and habitualize this or that. And that's the problem that most of us, I think, have is that every minute of our every day is so jam-packed with so much that we need to do, have to do, want to do, think we need to do, tied our self-worth to doing, and that there's no space for us to breathe, for our nervous system to re-regulate. And then so that's the first step in my philosophy is that stress regulation so that our nervous system can recalibrate, regulate, flip back over into healing. Because at the end of the day, um, nothing matters more than your health. Because what can you do
Nothing.
if there you can't do anything if you're dead. You
No,
you can't do
you
anything
can't.
if you're sick and you're stuck in bed for long periods of time and then the world's passing you by. So stress levels, and then once you learn how to create space, you can again coming back to my sober living friend coach, um focusing on the solutions instead of the problem. Another example is diet culture. Diet culture, oftentimes we're focusing on what we can't have and what the problem that we're trying to fix
Yep.
because why
Yep.
we don't like it about ourselves, yada yada. When instead we should be treating it more like a video game is what is coming into my head. You eat the carrot for stamina, and you eat the broccoli for more energy. And then, because that's kind of how video games are usually set up, you have like, potions and make it fun. I like to make things fun so that you're focusing on the positive instead of the negative, because what your mind focuses on grows. That's where the momentum is. So if you're focusing constantly on your diet, that which diets don't work, lifestyle changes do. Most of us do a diet for X amount of time and then we're like, "Oh, I'm done." And then, well, all your problems come rushing back in because you tried to fix a gaping wound with a Band-Aid. But instead, focusing on building your character, who you want to be 30 years from now. We're so short-minded. We don't tend to think in long term very often.
No, we don't. We don't. It's just like, get me happy now.
Yeah.
Make my life better now. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, all around us, it could be better if we just like sat in a, it sounds like you're able to bring people back into their bodies so that then they can make good decisions. That's brilliant.
Yeah, radical acceptance. That's what I touched on earlier, but I never closed out the point. It's always best, like, yes, we want to try our best, but not at the expense of our health and well-being. We have to learn how to make boundaries. We hear a lot about creating boundaries with other people in relationships and whatnot. We don't often hear about creating boundaries with ourselves and how creating boundaries with ourselves is the same thing as parenting yourself. We forget, we become adults and parents ourselves, and we have these little kids to take care of and parent, but we forget that we are still that kid that we were on the inside. It's just now we have grown-up responsibilities and things.
Yeah.
But just like you suggested earlier, doing the things that lit you up as a child, that's what you should still do now. You also still have to remind that inner child to maybe only eat one donut instead of five. Maybe turn the TV off at 9 instead of 11. Maybe,
Yeah.
like we do all these things, we grow up and we're like, "Oh, I don't have any rules." Well, that's great, but you do have the consequences that come with no rules still. So I heard this thing recently. It said, self-discipline isn't about limiting yourself, but about being able to live your life in the fullest. You limit the sugar intake so that you feel better. You limit the scrolling so that your mental health is better. You go to bed at a decent time so that you can wake up refreshed. Like, just discipline has a scarcity connotation like attached to it, but that's only because excess anything is bad for you.
That's true. That is true. That's a great way to look at discipline. It's sort of like, and it's good for me.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of restricting.
Right.
Instead of restricting, because when we think of discipline, right, we think of it's restricting me
Yeah.
from something. It's taking away my joy. It feels very, when you say the word, it feels very confining.
Yeah.
And yet you're what I'm hearing you say is that by having discipline or restricting some aspects, you're allowing other aspects to flourish.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't know. I think we're working on it together as a society and culture. We're figuring it out. We can't help that uh until the internet came about, information was pretty hard to come by. You had to go to a formal school, and which, like, we get into the problems of that and how whoever funds the schools gets to choose the curriculum. Um, and it was life-changing with me to me when I realized that even textbooks have errors
All the time.
all the time.
Because a human being is the one who created it and wrote it.
Yeah, and you can read books and you can be like, wow, I can hear the biasness in there in the words written on
Yeah.
the page.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't really thought about that very much, but you're right. You're right. Everything is a point of view. Everything.
Hmm.
Everything. And there's a gazillion point of views.
Hmm. Which brings us back earlier to you said, what is real? Nothing. Just assume nothing is real. I've been
Right.
living my life like that the past few years, and it's just so liberating. If you just take everything with a grain of salt.
It is so liberating because, we're the ones that define everything. I mean, like when you think about it, one time when I was going through a really hard time, a friend of mine I said something we hear all the time, but in that moment it sounded profound because she was like, "You're just in the middle of your story." And it was like, "Oh yeah, a story." And
Hmm.
there really is, like, yeah, I was born and then I die. Guess what? Everything else is the middle. So she's right. I will forever be in the middle of my story.
And it's subjective and relative, and you get to create it and you get to redesign it and you get to tell the stories of your past and you get to create the future to the best of your abilities. And then you can reframe it if you don't like how things are currently being framed. And none of it matters if it's quote unquote true or not. It just matters if it's helpful or not.
Yeah.
Whatever helps you mentally and emotionally, day by day, get through the life, get through the story in the best, most positive manner you can for both yourself and all of those around you is the right answer.
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. So tell us about your stories. We're at an hour, so we can wrap things up.
You got it. I have written a while ago, I wrote a children's book. I needed something. I needed something that would really give the idea of giving one's power away. And for me, it was a porcupine because porcupines use their quills to protect themselves. But I wanted to come up with a twist. And so my porcupine's named Paisley, and she dreams of being in the fashion world. But in the animal fashion world, porcupines are kind of like pincushions. They have to take their quills and use them to pin up Zavana, who's like the diva, the couture diva in that world. And she takes them to just use it to pin up her couture outfits. So little by little, she's giving away a part of herself, a part of herself, a part of herself for the other animals to look and feel good about what they're wearing until she's down to the last quill. And then it's what happens with the last quill that makes a difference. And so that was called Paisley's Last Quill. It was for little girls and they loved it. And the mothers came back to me and they said, "We love this story. Forget about our daughters and sons. We love this story." And it was like, click. I love to do musicals, so I'm going for the big over the top musical right now. So right now I'm creating Paisley the musical, and I'm hoping that it will one day be to the scale of Wicked, coming up with all the music and using that storyline. And that's where I'm at. And I'm just so excited about it.
That's super cool. I like that. Yeah, I believe that we make the world a better place by focusing on the children. Uh, I think our society and culture historically, again, I was a history major in college, so
Oh, wow.
historically,
Wow. Wow. It's so
uh,
cool.
children were always kind of pushed to the side,
Yeah.
seen, not heard, sit still, stay over there. And discipline, it's easier, it's always been easier to discipline with a forceful hand rather than try to talk to them like you would a real person because they're people. It's not something that ever made sense to me, is why we would treat children one way, yelling, hitting, but then we wouldn't treat our fellow adults the same way. Like, it's ridiculous to even consider treating an adult like that, but we would, treat children, which are smaller and more defenseless. And it just seemed cruel to me. But anyway, moving forward, uh, I think that's done a lot of damage to a lot of people throughout history because, we all agree that we have a lot of issues that we need to work through together as a society and culture and all the things. And we got here by hurt people hurting people because
Yeah.
that, especially solid trauma, the the brain stops developing at the age at which the trauma incurred. But we don't we're just now learning this like psychology is a fairly new subject. We were doing lobotomies on people just a few decades ago. So that was our psychology, you know, locking them away in insane asylums because the demons in their head. But now we know that the trauma incurs to children stunts their brain development. And so just because they continue growing and oh, now they're an adult, now they should know better. Why are you need to grow up? Why are you acting like a child? And it's like, well, they're still stuck in that trauma response that happened to them when they were a kid. But anyway, yes, focus on the children. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea for all of us. I like children way more than I like adults. They're way easier. Children don't have ulterior motives and they're never trying to get over on you. And most of us, if we sit back and we think about our own childhoods and what we needed the most and what meant the most to us, it was usually a safe adult that treated us like an individual. So if
Yeah.
we could just collectively try to do that a little bit more instead of like treating children, quote unquote, like children, like talking down to them, talking to them like a baby, like they don't understand, yada yada, all the things.
Well, and that's why, I mean, for so long with the self-worth initiative, everything was for kids and families. Although this musical is more for towards the scale of Wicked, so it's for adults. But I know, and you know, that there's a small kid in all of us
Hmm.
that wants magical realism and wants to go on these journeys. But more important than anything, everything that I do, everything that I set out to do is to help people through a journey, through a story, reclaim their self-worth, know how powerful they are, and know that, they're brilliant.
Cool. I like how Paisley has matured.
Yes, it's exactly. She's mature. She started out for little kids to believe in themselves, and then it just although I have to say, I've always loved musicals and I've created so many productions since I was 16. So this has always been a dream. But since I went through so many things physically myself, it's like, then you have nothing to lose.
Mm,
Go for it. You never know. You never know. There might be that day where it is as big as Wicked, and we're all sitting there, and it's got this glorious music that inspires and picks people up in magnificent ways.
hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah. None of us really have anything to lose. Everything's just fabricated. It's
yeah,
all, it's an illusion. Just like
all of it.
faith
All
is
of
an
it.
illusion.
All
Everything's
of
an
it.
illusion. You have nothing to
Yep.
lose. Go figure out how to be happy.
Yep.
Live your dreams. I love that you're
Yep.
doing it.
Thank you.
Way to spread some magic and joy.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll put all your links below so that people can find you, so that they can keep up with the story and how Paisley evolves and whatnot. Uh, I guess we'll just let them go.
Thank you. This was a delight. It was so refreshing just chat with you. It was beautiful. You have so much to offer. Thank you for doing that. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
making a difference. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Thank you for coming on and having a chat with me.
Okay. Bye.